Eyvah! Eyvahlar olsun.
Teknelerin
Dur çatı gitti, çatı gitti. Çatı gitti. Çatı gitti.
The morning of January 8, 2026 started like any other day in Istanbul until it didn't. Within hours, one of the world's most vibrant cities would be brought to its knees by a force of nature so powerful that it would leave millions stranded, boats shattered against rocks and planes circling helplessly in the sky. What happened next would test the limits of an entire region's resilience. As dawn broke over the Marmara region that Thursday morning, something was already stirring in the atmosphere. The south wind, which had been quietly building strength overnight, began to flex its muscles. Weather services had been tracking this system for days, issuing warnings that most people hoped would prove overly cautious. They weren't. By noon, what started as strong gusts had transformed into something far more sinister. Wind speeds that had been manageable just hours earlier suddenly exploded to hurricane force levels, averaging between 70 to 90 kilometers per hour across the city. But these were just the averages. In coastal areas, the readings were pushing into territory that made even seasoned meteorologists take notice. The transformation happened so rapidly that many residents were caught completely off guard. One moment, people were going about their daily routines. The next, they were witnessing scenes of destruction that seemed almost surreal. Trees that had stood for decades were being ripped from the ground like weeds. Rooftops that had weathered countless storms were peeling away from buildings as if they were made of paper. The maritime community was among the first to feel the storm's full wrath. All sea bus services connecting Istanbul to Bursa came to an immediate halt, as did the city's ferry routes. But the real drama was unfolding along the Tuzla coastline, where a catastrophe was developing in real time. Boat owners who had hoped to ride out the storm watched in horror as their vessels, some worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, were tossed around like toys in a bathtub. The massive waves, generated by the relentless southwestern winds, proved too much for even the sturdiest moorings. One by one, boats began breaking free, some capsizing immediately while others were driven onto the rocky shore with devastating force. The scenes captured by onlookers were nothing short of apocalyptic. Fishermen, their faces etched with desperation, waded into the churning waters trying to save what they could. Some managed to secure a line here or there, but for many it was a losing battle against nature's fury. The sound of fiberglass hulls cracking against rocks mixed with the howling wind created a symphony of destruction that would haunt those who witnessed it.
Eyvah! Eyvahlar olsun. Eyvahlar olsun arkadaşlar.
On Istanbul's Üsküdar coast, the situation reached almost biblical proportions. Waves measuring 5 meters in height, that's roughly the height of a 2-story building, came crashing over the massive coastal rocks that normally provided protection. These waves didn't stop at the shoreline. They surged inland with such force that they completely engulfed the local fishermen's shelter. The fishermen inside had mere seconds to react. As the structure filled with seawater, they scrambled to save their smaller boats and dinghies, engaging in a frantic race against time and tide. This wasn't their first storm. Just days earlier, 8 boats had been lost in similar conditions, but this one was proving to be in a league of its own. Similar chaos was unfolding in Fenerbahçe, where the storm surge pushed seawater far beyond its normal boundaries. The coastal roads, usually bustling with traffic, were suddenly transformed into temporary rivers. Drivers found themselves navigating not just wind and rain, but actual waves washing across the asphalt. While the drama at sea level was capturing everyone's attention, an equally dangerous situation was developing thousands of feet above. Istanbul's airports, normally humming with activity, ground to a complete standstill. At Sabiha Gökçen Airport, pilots attempting to land found themselves battling wind shear so severe that touchdown became impossible. Passenger planes, some carrying hundreds of people, were forced to abort their landing attempts at the last moment. The go-arounds, aviation's term for aborted landings, began stacking up. Some aircraft circled for so long that fuel became a concern, forcing diversions to alternate airports. Inside these planes, passengers gripped their armrests as the aircraft bucked and rolled in the turbulent air. The ripple effects were immediate and far-reaching. Thousands of travelers found themselves stranded, their carefully planned journeys thrown into chaos. Airlines scrambled to accommodate passengers, but with the storm showing no signs of abating, options were limited. Back on the ground, Istanbul's emergency services were being pushed to their limits. The metropolitan municipality's crisis teams were responding to incidents faster than they could log them. By the time they released their first official count, the numbers were staggering: 69 separate incidents requiring immediate response. The breakdown told a story of widespread destruction. 26 trees had been completely uprooted, not just branches broken, but entire root systems torn from the earth. 16 buildings had lost their roofs entirely. 23 instances of dangerous building parts breaking loose were recorded, along with 4 toppled poles and countless signs and billboards scattered across the city. In Avcılar district, one particular incident captured the random destructiveness of the storm. A 4-story building's entire roof structure was ripped away in one piece, sailing through the air before crashing down onto 2 parked cars below. The vehicles were crushed beyond recognition, their alarms wailing uselessly in the wind. A similar scene played out near the E5 highway, where pieces of a commercial building's roof became deadly projectiles. The debris rained down on the street below, causing extensive damage to property and forcing authorities to close the area entirely. As the afternoon wore on, the warnings from authorities became increasingly urgent. The Istanbul governor's office took the unusual step of advising all residents on the European side of the city to remain indoors unless absolutely necessary. This wasn't just precautionary advice, it was a plea for people to take the danger seriously. Meteorologists tracking the system noticed something else that added another layer of concern. The storm wasn't just about wind, it was about to bring a dramatic temperature change. As the wind direction shifted from south to northwest in the evening, temperatures were predicted to plummet by 8 to 10 degrees Celsius. This wasn't just uncomfortable, it was potentially dangerous for anyone caught outside or without adequate heating. The storm's reach extended far beyond Istanbul's borders. In Bursa, the morning started with similar scenes of destruction. Trees lined the streets like fallen soldiers, and roofs were scattered across neighborhoods. But the most alarming incident occurred at a university campus, where the female dormitory suffered a catastrophic roof failure. Huge sections of roofing material crashed through the building, penetrating student rooms below. The fact that no injuries were reported was nothing short of miraculous, especially considering that some rooms had walls collapse from the impact. Students evacuated in panic, many leaving behind their possessions as they fled to safety. The city of Yalova faced its own nightmare as winds reached 80 kilometers per hour. The defining image of the destruction there was a massive shipyard crane, a structure designed to withstand significant forces, toppling like a felled tree. The psychological impact of seeing something so substantial brought down so easily wasn't lost on residents. Yalova's authorities took unprecedented action, banning all motorcycles and delivery couriers from the roads between noon and 10 p.m. This decision, while disruptive to commerce and daily life, potentially saved lives as 2-wheeled vehicles would have been death traps in such conditions. The ferry service between Yalova and Eskihisar became another casualty of the storm. One ferry attempting to dock was forced to turn back when the captain realized that approaching the pier would be suicidal. Passengers, already queasy from the rough seas, faced the additional ordeal of returning to their point of origin. Down the coast in Balıkesir's Edremit district, the storm surge created a different but equally dangerous situation. 2-meter waves, modest compared to Istanbul's 5-meter monsters but still formidable, pushed seawater deep into coastal neighborhoods. Businesses that had operated at sea level for generations suddenly found themselves dealing with flooding that threatened their very existence. The waterfront promenades, usually filled with people enjoying seaside walks, disappeared entirely beneath the churning waters. The infrastructure designed for recreation was being tested as flood defense, a role it was never meant to play. As evening approached, the General Directorate of Meteorology expanded their warnings to cover 63 provinces across Turkey. The yellow alert, indicating potentially dangerous conditions, painted a picture of a weather system affecting a massive swath of the country. While the Marmara and Aegean regions bore the brunt, the impacts were being felt far and wide. Weather experts analyzing the storm noted something unusual about this particular event. While strong southerly winds weren't unprecedented in the region, the rate at which this system intensified was remarkable. The sudden escalation from manageable winds to hurricane-force gusts happened so quickly that normal preparation time was compressed to almost nothing. This rapid intensification posed unique challenges for infrastructure designed with certain wind tolerances in mind. Buildings, transportation systems, and utilities that could handle gradual increases in wind speed were overwhelmed by the sudden spike in force. As Thursday evening arrived, there was finally some hope on the horizon. Forecasters predicted that the storm would begin to lose intensity overnight, with conditions improving significantly by Friday morning, January 9th. But this respite came with a warning. Another system was already forming, scheduled to arrive over the weekend. The weekend forecast painted a complex picture. Saturday afternoon would see the return of strong southerly winds, though hopefully not reaching Thursday's intensity. By Sunday, the precipitation pattern would shift, with rain giving way to a wintry mix that could include snow. The yo-yo weather pattern was set to continue, keeping everyone on edge. Throughout this ordeal, the human element remained paramount. Behind every statistic was a personal story: the fisherman who lost his livelihood, the student whose dorm room was destroyed, the traveler stranded far from home. The storm had reminded an entire region of nature's awesome power and humanity's vulnerability in the face of it. Emergency services, despite being stretched thin, performed admirably under pressure. The coordination between different agencies, from meteorological services to municipal emergency teams, prevented what could have been a far worse catastrophe. Their advance warnings, even if not fully heeded by everyone, undoubtedly saved lives. The storm of January 8, 2026, would go down as one of the most significant weather events in recent Marmara history. Not necessarily because it was the strongest ever recorded, but because of its sudden intensification and widespread impact on modern urban life. It served as a stark reminder that despite all our technological advances, we remain at the mercy of natural forces. As residents began the cleanup process and assessed the damage, conversations turned to preparedness and resilience. How could cities better prepare for such rapid onset events? What infrastructure improvements were needed? These questions would dominate discussions in the weeks and months to come. The images of boats smashing against rocks, planes circling unable to land, and roofs flying through the air would remain etched in memory. They served as powerful reminders of that Thursday when nature decided to show its strength, and an entire region was forced to stop, take shelter, and wait for the storm to pass. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.